stone portal stands, massive but forlorn, world. You can find the answer on one of those grand ceremonial occasions for which the English have a special affection and a native genius. Jubilee Day, a day of rejoicing and a spectacular pageant for the people of Britain and their friends from overseas. They've come to London to see the Queen on her ceremonial drive from Buckingham Palace to St. Paul's Cathedral. The colourful procession passes through the main streets of London, the Royal Mall, the Strand, and into Fleet Street, where own right, with its own police force and its own jurisdiction and civic rights handed down for centuries. The city's western boundary starts here, where Fleet Street joins the Strand, and it's there that a highly unusual and very significant ceremony, Queen or King of England, passes from the Westminster district of London into Fleet Street and the city. There, the monarch, by long tradition, will be greeted by the Lord Mayor. The royal carriage draws towards the site, and will not pass on until the Lord Mayor has presented the monarch with the ceremonial sword of the city. The sovereign simply touches the sword, and by that action gives recognition to the city's historic rights and authority. At one and the same time, the loyalty of the city to its sovereign is affirmed, symbolizing that happy two-way process which typifies the best traditions. For over 4 centuries, this ceremony has been carried out at this very spot called Temple Bar. And that gives us the clue to the mystery of that massive stone portal standing alone and neglected in the heart of an English country backwater. For that portal is Temple Bar, and it used to stand as gateway to the city of London, right here where Fleet Street begins. And a simpler memorial now marks the spot. And why might lawyers throughout the English-speaking world be interested? Because Temple Bar is more than a name on the street maps of London. It's a symbol of the common law throughout the world. Only a few yards away from here, and the site of Old Temple Bar, stand the Royal Courts of Justice. Inside are the chambers of one of the world's foremost living authorities on the law, Master of the Rolls, Lord Denning. We asked Lord Denning to tell us about Temple Bar and the development of the common law in Britain and overseas.
Yes, well, as you see, I've just come out of court. I've discarded my wig and gown, and now would like to tell you how important Temple Bar has been in our history. Through that doorway, that gateway, the Temple Bar, have strewn the great figures of the common law over the last 300 years. Most of you will have heard of Sir William Blackstone, his famous commentaries. He had his chambers just the other side in the Temple. And you would see those coming across the Strand, or in those days they went up by river to Westminster Hall, where the judges have laid down for centuries the common law of England. Temple Bar is almost the centerpiece of the common law.
Would it be true, Your Lordship, to say that the common law has had an influence overseas as well as in England?
Yes, indeed. You will remember, of course, that 300 or 400 years ago, the settlers from England went out to America, and they took with them, and were proud to take with them, the rights of Englishmen. But those rights had been carried on in the common law right from the beginnings, from Magna Carta in 1215, and the words of that great charter are to be found today in the charters of Virginia and Massachusetts. But not only there, from all the great territories overseas, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and beyond those, you'll find the fundamental principles, even in the constitutions of India and many other the great members of the Commonwealth. Yes, the common law has travelled far, far now from Temple Bar.
To what extent, my lad, has the English common law benefited in return from this expansion of the common law abroad?
Well, in the early days, of course, it was those in the New World who took the law from the common law of England, such as the great writs of habeas corpus, which preserve the liberty of the individual, and so forth. But now, within, the last 100 years, there's been a complete return. The developments in overseas, in the New World and elsewhere, have been far wider and on far deeper principles than we have had in England, and we've been learning a great deal. For instance, the ordinary simple case of an action for negligence, and whatever you do, you're liable if you don't use proper care. That's all come back to us from the United States. And then the principles of equity, of fair dealing, have been far more elaborated there than here. And of course the constitutional law of the United States has spread to all our great Commonwealth. The principles which have been enunciated there, such as the principles recently by the Supreme Court in regard to the President Nixon, are all being followed and applied throughout the common law countries of the world. It is indeed a valuable reverse trend. Back once more to Temple Bar.
Temple Bar is the sole survivor of the many gateways which once encompassed the city. In Tudor times, a wooden gate had been constructed. But by the reign of good King Charles II, the existing gate was considered unsafe. Christopher Wren was commissioned to design and rebuild the bar which we know today. It took shape in 1672, probably Wren's first public commission. Scarcely a dozen years had passed before the barbaric custom began of exhibiting the heads of traitors on spikes and poles on top of Temple Bar. At least one enterprising storekeeper in the locality used to hire out spyglasses for members of the public who wished to obtain a closer view. The British have always had a heartwarming respect for their dead. For almost 2 centuries, Wren's Temple Bar played its prominent role as gateway to the city and legal London, and many monarchs passed beneath its central arch. But in the middle of Queen Victoria's reign, the structure was becoming a serious hindrance to the growing volume of traffic, and the building itself was unsafe and needed bracing up. Arguments raged back and forth to demolish or to preserve, but by 1878 it was decided to dismantle the gateway. The work was carried out by the firm of John Mowlem, and the stones, carefully numbered, were carried off to a nearby builder's yard. There, for the next 10 years, they remained neglected, until Sir Henry Mewkes, a wealthy citizen, decided to re-erect the bar at his own expense at his country estate of Theobald's Park, where it acquired a new, if somewhat different, lease of life. Lady Mewkes had dreamt of it as an elegant portal to the driveway leading up to their stately home at Theobald's Park, just outside London. But after the First World War, the house was deserted, and Temple Bar stood as a monumental gateway to nowhere.
With each passing year, the structure became more and more derelict, and it looked as though Temple Bar would be consigned just to the pages of history books. Then, in 1948, the present owner, Sir Ian Gilmore, made an unconditional offer of the arch to the City of London. Many new sites were proposed, but they all came to nothing, despite one certain fact, that unless Temple Bar was saved, it would fall down. In 1976, a scheme was launched to restore London's famous gateway to the heart of the city, in the precincts of St. Paul's Cathedral. When I was visiting the United States in their bicentennial year, I had the good fortune to become reacquainted with Charles Bain, and he agreed to chair a national campaign in America to help save Temple Bar. The first stage in this project will be to survey the monument, for which scaffolding will be erected this winter. All the stones will have to be numbered, and many of them will be replaced, just as much of the carved work will be made good by the finest team of craftsmen in Europe who are still available to undertake this artistry.
Discussion has gone on for decades about the best place in London to restore the bar. In 1960, it was proposed that a suitable site would be adjacent to St. Paul's Cathedral. In 1976, the Dean and Chapter of St. Paul's kindly made the site available in front of Chapter House Court, with open access from Ludgate Hill and the modern block of Debenham Tewson's Bancroft House. This is the spacious site where the Queen strolled among the crowds of citizens and tourists on her Jubilee Day, after the national Thanksgiving service in St. Paul's Cathedral. The site has numerous advantages: the dignity of the setting in the majestic precincts of the cathedral, no traffic to destroy the tranquility of the scene, the attraction of St. Paul's to millions of visitors from all over the world. It seems particularly fitting that Temple Bar, Sir Christopher Wren's first public commission, should be placed next to St. Paul's, his last and greatest. The Temple Bar Trust hopes to coincide the completion of the return of the portal to London in 1979, the centenary year of its removal from the city, and it is hoped that the next time Her Majesty the Queen strolls through this precinct, it will be after the unveiling of Temple Bar in its rightful place, back in the heart of the City of London.
We need $1 million, that is £600,000. Whether you share, like Sir Hugh Wantner, a love for and respect of the civic institutions, or whether you descend, like Mr. Bain, from an historic law firm, this project needs you. I urge you to support us, either in pounds freely given or in dollars pledged to the American Foundation, which is now a registered tax-deductible organization. When you are invited to London to the opening celebrations of Temple Bar, we can again say with one voice, "Long live the law." Vivat Lex.